Hi, and greetings, and good morning, and thank you for joining me for this week's edition of Soul Call Friday. I am Dr. Paula Price, and we have a wonderful guest today who is going to really give us an opportunity to expand and explore what it is to be a young man in today's era. This young man is very special. He's very special to me, and I'll tell you what God said so that you'll like it. As we were getting ready for the show this morning, the Lord said to me very clearly, He's about to help many of sons. So wherever we go, God takes us the way He wants us to go. Whichever direction we go in, God said He's getting ready to be a help to a many of sons. So this is going to be great. I love it when I get my sons on because it's just a different flow. So let me not belabor the time. I want to introduce you to Lovey. Lovey, tell them who you are, about yourself. Give us a little bit of background, like how you got to Tulsa, and you're in you and what did you do in college? Because I think what you fill your time with right now is very important.
I got my degree in, well, I got three. I got my undergrad in computer science at French University. Yes, it is a real university. I get that all the time. So French University, I got my computer science degree. My master's I got in management information systems,
Mm.
and then my second master's I got in management information security.
Oh, so you're just all teched up. You are really armed and ready for this particular age, this information age that we're in right now. And now we're moving past information into a whole other thing. But tell us a little bit about you, Lovey, and where you're from and how we got
Okay.
together.
So I'm born and originally from Wichita, Kansas. And my journey from Wichita, Kansas to here is actually quite interesting.
Yeah.
And I could just kind of start out there. And what happened was during that time period, I was introduced into the prophetic.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a particular prophet at that time that was doing just calling names out and stuff like that. And I was just like, how do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
And I was so enthralled by that. And I remember because at that time I was the chauffeur for this particular prophet at that
Mm-hmm.
time, driving him
Mm-hmm.
around, and I was told not to really ask questions, but my curiosity got the best of me. So I asked him. He was polite, and I said, "Hey, like, how did you do that? Like, how you're calling out folks' name, doing this and doing that? How do you do that?" And he said, "It was God." And I was like, I know that, but can you kind of explain? Because I'm very analytical.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked them, and I wasn't satisfied. But because I wasn't satisfied with that, I think that really that drive was kind of getting me to search.
Mm-hmm.
But even prior to that, because I was raised in church my whole entire life, I was a good old Baptist boy.
Mm.
I was raised Baptist from the time I was born up until maybe mid-20s, and then I transitioned from out of that to a non-denominational, and then to currently where I'm at now. But in that journey into the prophetic, I was always that kind of like that know-it-all kid, and I could never explain it even as a kid. Like I was just say stuff and then it would happen, or I would be called, like you know it all, and like just be quiet, love it. You don't know what you're talking about, and then a month later, you was right. So,
Mm-hmm.
so, so that was always that. But in my journey, I remember distinctly what happened. I was actually again, I was in this journey with church, and I was loving on the Lord and stuff like that. But I kept saying, God, there's got to be more, because I felt like I was hitting a plateau.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember went to Barnes and Noble, and I was actually going for somebody else. And my friend at that time, I said, like, hey, they're going back to Houston. I said, hey, you know what? Buy you a book, and it's on me. So she went, looked around, bought her a book, and I'm just rummaging around, and I see this book called The Prophet's Handbook. I said, The Prophet's Handbook? What is that? Pick it up, open it up, and I was like, this book says what I went through as a kid. Like, this has the answers. And then I flip it over, and it said, Dr. Paula Price. She's black. What?
You don't get that a lot, right?
Yeah. I said, what? Wait a minute. So I read through that book maybe, oh goodness, that first time I probably read it through within a month, because I was just so drawn by it. But then got to the back, it said, take an assessment. Oh, and then it was like at that time, I think it was like $49. I said, you know what? I wasted money on
What you want?
on a whole bunch of other stuff. What's $49 more? But as I'm reading this book, I said, this book is answering stuff about me that nobody can never really answer.
Now, Rachel's going to put that up on the screen for you because I know that this man's testimony is piquing your interest and perhaps motivating you or stimulating you to want to get more. So she's going to put it up on the screen. And for this show, it comes with the Prophet's Dictionary, and we will give you the pair for a discount. We'll just by the time you hear the end of this, you'll be able to get the two because you will want that. But let's get back to Lovey's experience with the handbook.
Oh yeah, because what it was, and the reason why that handbook spoke so much to me is because, again, through my entire childhood, I would dream and I would just kind of know stuff. And even my name Lovey, people are like, where'd you get that name? Is that a nickname? I said, no, my name is not a nickname. I actually got it from my great grandfather, Lovey Grimes, who was a pastor out of Waco, Texas. So I even when he died, like there's a picture of me and my great grandfather, and he was like about to transition, but he stayed alive long enough because he found out he had a great grandson that was carrying his name. So there's a picture that I have at home where like I'm a baby, but I'm on his chest. And then like 2 or 3 days after that, he transitioned. So I have that picture, and that picture like means the world to me.
Sure.
So on top of that, so then just kind of like through my church, just my experience with church, I will get called out. They say, you're a prophet, you're a prophet, you're a prophet. And in my head, I'm like, that sounds good, but what is a prophet?
I know that's right. Because aren't they all dead?
Well,
because I mean, we know them in the Bible, but there's anybody walking around like this today?
No, absolutely. So, it was just like I didn't know what a prophet was. I thought prophets were just in the Bible, but a modern prophet, I didn't know. At best, I thought it was somebody who predict the future. And then transition into my early 2000s, it was more the same. So when I was reading this book, and I didn't get the best answer from a well-known prophet, I said, well, how do you do this? And he could not provide the answer. Your book did that. And it's just and I began to see myself in this book. And I said, Lord, I don't know what I said. My exact word, I said, Lord, I don't know what this woman went through to write this book, but clearly it's me. And I needed that.
So let me ask you this. What particular thing did you find at that moment in the grip of your search? What particular statement or revelation that you read there really began to open it up, turn the key for you?
It was, for me, you explain what prophecy is not, and then you say the need for a prophet and why prophets still exist. So you broke all of that down for me, and what that spoke to me, like you didn't leave it into the whole devotional inferior area versus what I was seeing. So you really brought a very scholarly look, and really spoke to my intelligence, and that's what I needed.
Yeah.
And that's what I really appreciated that. So how you started your book, and then you even broke down how God calls a prophet. And then you broke down what false prophecy is and what it is. And I'm just like, I said, I have never heard this before. So when I get,
did you feel like when you read the false prophecy piece, did you feel like you had been maybe exposed to false prophecy or the false prophetic? And if you did, how did you recognize it, and what did it do for you on the inside?
For me, it answered a lot of questions, but then at the same time, I became at odds with a lot of people.
Did you now?
Yes.
You're a little argumentative, maybe?
Slightly argumentative, but it came from a pure place of I want to help, right? And I can honestly say too, even at that stage, because I feel like all my awakenings was going on, and even at that time, and I'll never forget my first encounter with you, because I took the I took the assessment, and right before I had my call with Apostle Ashley at that time, I called the show because I was looking you up. I mean, I said, okay, I need to know more about this woman, and I'm looking her up, and I found out you had a show, Blog Talk Radio, and then so I said, okay, well,
what a lifetime.
In 2013. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen, and I call in, and your first word to me was, you said to be excellent. You said, I need to be excellent. And you also cautioned me to not to be impressed with the theatrics. And I was like, wait a minute, what? I said, this woman don't know me from a hole in the wall. And the first thing, and then you said, but you are a prophet.
Mm-hmm.
You said you are a bona fide prophet. I said, this woman, and I'm like I'm at home. I said, this woman don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
How is she doing this? Like, I'm just getting just mind blown. And
Mm-hmm.
you're just saying, like, this is what I'm going to become. This is what I'm going to do. And this, I said, okay. I said, I got to know more. Now I'm just more drawn in. And then I have my assessment. And then the assessment told me what I was. And at that time, I came up as teacher. So then I was a little confused. So I
Mm-hmm.
brought it to
You're
Apostle Ashley,
dominant or you're secondary?
my dominant.
Okay.
But she explained in the MAQ, she said, well, that's because the ministry that you're under. So you're
Mm-hmm.
under that. So that's what you're coming up as. But my secondary was apostolic.
Mm-hmm.
So then
Do you remember your third,
not at
your
the moment.
environment?
Not at the moment. Not at the moment.
Because that's what moved you out of your church.
Yes. Yes. So it was intriguing. So just go back to your original question about the false prophecy. It put me at odds because I was beginning to understand some things, and maybe there were some times I wasn't the best, but I
Mm-hmm.
think I was just very raw at that time because now I'm being opened up to what's out there and the understanding. And it put me at odds, and it caused this tension. But so there were days I want to walk away from it, but I was so drawn by the calling that was on my life
Mm-hmm.
that I kept going. And
Did you have a support system where you were, would you say, or were they sensitive or were they indifferent? Because you usually when you're in a church and it's not a prophetic church or not an apostolic church, you usually are going to get one of those three. If you don't get the immediate embracement, you're going to get sensitive. All right, well, God is doing something, and they leave you alone. You're going to get indifferent. Well, we don't want to mess with the Lord is doing, but just don't mess us up here.
Mhm.
Or if they were very resistant to it, and so thus you can have that, but just don't do that here. What would you say would be your experience?
Supportive at first, indifferent, and then confrontational.
Yeah.
If it
Okay.
went through all three.
Uh-huh.
At first it was very supportive. They was like, yeah, yeah. Even my friends, and a lot of my friends too, were very supportive of it too. And I can admit I was a chatterbox about it because like I just want to share. I want
Mm-hmm.
to share what the Lord is doing with me, and what I'm understanding, and I'm what I thought was God is no longer God, and I'm just like just a big ball of just energy because I'm just like yes, this is God, this is not God, and let me tell you how I'm getting there, and explaining and tell my other friends take the assessment and this and that, and I'm just growing. But then it fades from growing in the Lord because I'm excited and I feel like I'm getting answers because that's all I really want. I said, I want answers.
Mm.
And I was getting answers, and then it transitioned to indifference because now when you're when you're coming out of a certain type of theology or understanding what you thought was Christ. And I remember during one of your conferences, you said to me, he said, but Lovey, but God's going to call you to be different. Do not be surprised at the fiery trials.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what?
People like me. Come on,
what?
everybody's excited.
I was like, what? I don't, but, and then I went back to my room, and I remember the first thing I said, I don't think I'm saved. That's what I said. I said, I don't think I came to your first conference and I questioned my salvation.
Mm-hmm.
And not because I didn't think I was saved. It was because the amount of information I was getting at so rapid a rate, and the explanation, and really not getting us impressed with prophecy, but to point us back to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And that was why I said, man, I said, this is what I needed. I said, I need somebody to point me back to Christ, challenge me on this, make me research. And that journey became more. So it was like I was getting pulled, and I could feel this thing pulling on me. And I was buying books, buying all your like. I mean, the minute you released anything, I was buying it. I was buying it and eating it up and reading it and reading it. And and I was bringing my friends and at that time my church along. But then just it got different because then when God begins to show you stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah.
it gets
It's the rod.
it gets different.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it brought me back to a situation where I remember I had an encounter with the Lord, but I was at that turning point where God was showing me something. Because like I'm all about respecting leadership and doing something behind the scenes. And when God was showing me stuff, and I would have my sessions because I never want to buck
Mm-hmm.
the system, but the internal gnawing, and and all those alarm bells in me saying, God's like, this ain't me. This ain't me. This ain't me. This ain't me.
Mm-hmm.
But you see the majority of your people
Mm-hmm.
going this way. So now you're way out here, but everybody's going that way. And I can admit now, looking back at the
Mm-hmm.
situation, there are some things I probably could have done better. I actually not probably.
You
I
couldn't
know.
have. See, a lot of us are in that point.
Okay.
We think that because we now, in hindsight, which is 2020, we think that we should have done or could have done. But hindsight is in the past. But in order for you to become it to turn into foresight, you had to be equipped with that experience. So you couldn't have.
Okay.
God does that with prophets. God will take and make you, when he first wakes you up, everybody, you the candy store. Everybody loves you.
Yeah.
They can't get enough of you.
Yeah.
And then the mantle, that spirit is popped open,
Yeah.
and the first most difficult thing a young prophet has to do is figure out why your spirit was open the way it was. You obviously were literally under the direct tutelage of the Almighty. The Holy Ghost was taking care of all of it, leading you to the books, leading you to the teachings because of what he was going to do and how he was going to use you. But if you don't get past that I woulda, coulda, shoulda, you won't be able to go forward because everything about the prophet is life and living. We don't get just textbook. You got the textbook, and next thing you know, the situation you read is happening at work. It's happening on your job. It's because the prophet is a living vessel and vehicle of the Almighty. We are a vessel and a vehicle. So you are learning and God is talking, but you're a baby. What do babies do? Blurt out everything.
Yeah.
Baby's like, that ain't God. No, that's not the Lord. But all of that is part of it. Now I want to ask you, through this, was God taking you through his word?
Yes.
Like, were you, because that's our calling card. Was he taking you through his word?
Oh, absolutely. It was no different. Like I would have the prophet's dictionary. I would have my Bible, my Bible that my grandmother got me. Got that, and then I would have the handbook, and I'm doing cross referencing, and I'm looking up words, and so I'm doing all of that at that time, and I'm just a ball of, and I'm just like, Lord, I said, I know what I'm reading. I said, I know this is true. I know what I'm reading is true, but then you kind of, like you just said, I was going through that conflict, and I didn't know how to handle it, and just. It was ugly. It was ugly. And
which part was the ugly though? The ugly part. We all have a story. Because see, if you don't come through ugly, you didn't come through God as a prophet. Because see, God, you just don't come to the banqueting table, baby. You come in the back door with the little hairy garment on.
Yeah. I would say ugly in a sense of my health.
Oh, so you had physical reactions?
Yes, I had it was just, I remember at one point at church where I was just stressed out with everything, what God was showing me, my personal life, family life, and I was just so overwhelmed. And in typical God fashion, right before, I passed out, God just said, "I'm going to be with you." And I was working, and I came to church that Sunday, and I was in the sound booth, working the sound booth, and then I was, doing the presentation, and then all of a sudden I just dropped. I dropped, and I just dropped. And
you were out. How long were you out? Do you remember?
I woke right back up, but I woke back up, but like it was just like kind of like I woke up, but then I remember the ambulance came, they carted me off through the back, and it was then I remember I heard God's voice again. He said, "Get up," and I was like, "I can't." He said, "Get up," and I heard it again. He said, "Get up." So I kind of stood up, and I remember the personnel looking at me like.
Did you not?
I'm like, I said, no, I'm not. I said, I'm not getting on the back of that ambulance. I'm going home.
Wow. Now I'm going to tell you some things that I think you and all of you all watching me today would appreciate. So one of the things I want to tell you is that when your prophet spirit is awakened God's way, it's going to fight against every piece of darkness in you.